Hi, I'm Katie Kempner, and we're here at Advertising Week Europe. And right now, I am talking with the CEO of NABS. Hello.
Hi, Katie.
How are you?
Very good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for stopping by. So, can you please talk a little bit about what NABS is?
Absolutely. NABS is, at its sort of most basic sense, it's a charity for people who work in advertising and media. And to many people's amazement, it actually turned 100 last year, which is quite phenomenal. Having said which, I think it's really, as you can imagine, that word advertising and charity make very unusual bedfellows.
Right.
And I think it's particularly important in an industry where 60% or close to 60% are under the age of 30 and only 5% are over the age of 50, to make sure that what we do is relevant for those working within the industry. So as a result, we do much more than what people think, which is the crisis end. We're there really to provide support to anybody on the journey of their career at any stage. So for the under 30s, it's much more around mentoring and networking and coaching. And then as people get older, there's also other courses, coaching, retraining grants, workshops that we do. So a whole spectrum of services. And we basically look for some need spots within the industry. So for instance, last year we launched a program around resilience, building resilience in our working lives. And we're just about to launch a program to try and help working parents both transition back into the workplace, but also whilst they're doing the inevitable hard life-work balance with their kids at home.
Well, I'd love to talk about that because that's sort of like my hot topic. So can you talk a little bit about what that program is and what you found out?
We first of all did some research and we found out some things that you would expect, that there's a huge amount of guilt resting amongst people, particularly actually at about 85% of working parents spend their time feeling guilty. Quite a high percentage of people, whilst they may not themselves say they've had to leave a job because of the pressures of work, they know of other people who have done it, so about 65%. The other areas that we found was actually there are a lot of benefits to people working, because we did our survey amongst working parents and non-working parents. And we found that both recognised that what the strength of being a working parent was, that actually you brought a better perspective.
Yeah.
You actually came back and you saw you could manage your life and work balance better, you were better at time management, and you were better at the sort of the more EQ empathy levels in terms of dealing with people in the workplace. So there's a positive side to the story, apart from the fact there's obviously a lot of work to be done in terms of making sure that they can manage both sides of the equation.
And I've always thought, I'm a good role model for my kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
Seeing that I can do all these different things. Maybe I'm not there every second, but overall I'm giving them very good quality of time.
Absolutely.
You mentioned guilt, which I've been talking about with so many of my guests, and I think is one of the biggest components of work-life balance. I've mentioned this a few times because on the plane on the way here, I read the most recent issue of Harvard Business Review. The cover story is about work-life balance and a survey they've done. And in the survey, they say that men who have to miss things with their families because they're working do not feel guilty about it.
Yeah.
They just feel like I'm doing what I need to do to provide for my family.
Yeah.
Women leaders who have to miss things with their family because of work feel terribly guilty about it.
Absolutely.
And I think from talking with many women, when they're with their families, they're feeling guilty that they're not at work. When they're at work, they're feeling guilty they're missing something with their families. So what do you think, what are you teaching and what is the answer to this?
No, I think you're absolutely right. In fact, it was really interesting when we looked at the guilt statistics, and to my surprise, they were quite evenly split around men and women. They were slightly higher amongst women, but then when you drilled down into it, you looked at actually where the most of the guilt for the men was driven was when they were at home, they were feeling guilty about not being at work. Whereas the women were having the guilt both at the home and the workplace. So which was really, it just made you sort of realise that actually there's quite a lot of issues at stake here. So in terms of our programme, what we're doing, we definitely don't want it to become too gender specific, although it will obviously have a more female bias, is we're doing a whole series of one-to-one coaching, but also workshops on how to manage the guilt factor. And they'll be run by proper career coaches and proper people who are experienced in managing the working parent balance. Because at the end of the day, to uncover that guilt in a way to give them the positive behavioural tips to manage in a way that will actually improve their working concept and also being a better parent. Because unfortunately, Guilt is a very negative emotion, and it's not going to help, both at home or at work.
And in reality, I mean, the parenting, if you have kids and that's in the mix is a big factor. But really, that I mean, I've talked to plenty of women that are single or married that don't have children, and also feel like, well, I shouldn't take that time to be on vacation, or I shouldn't take that time for myself because I should be working. But in reality, I mean, doesn't that make you a better person, a better worker?
Absolutely. You've got to, I think a number of things. First of all, you've got to have what we call your golden rules. And they will vary by person, and they'll vary by job, and they'll vary by, individual and gender and all this bit. But establish some basic rules. And sometimes you need to deviate from them because, circumstances will require. And we work in a very team-oriented business, so there will be the occasions where you will have to, stay at home, or stay at work, I should say. But on the other hand, if you can establish some basic criteria, that will make a big difference. The other thing is we believe very much in wherever you are, try and be as present as you can. This whole thing with constant multitasking, not just through technology, but also constantly thinking. We may be talking here, but we're thinking somewhere else. Is whilst you're in the moment, try and be as much in the moment. That's not just in the workplace. That's when you're getting home for that, let's face it, that quality half an hour because you've rushed around, got home for the bath time, the bedtime. When you're reading to your kids, is just, that BlackBerry, or no longer the BlackBerry, the Android is way out of the equation, and you're focused on that moment.
Okay, that's another article in that Harvard Business Review.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to get that
I'm
issue
gonna
for
go
you.
get it.
You have to go get it, because there's another article on the same issue about being present, and I think that is so important, and it doesn't happen. Andrew Keller, who is the CEO of our company, sent an email to everyone recently, and he said, I understand that people are in meetings and, you're concerned, you're worried about what's going on, so you're looking at your iPhone, you're looking, at your phone, but if you're so busy that you can't focus on the meeting, maybe it's not a good time to have the meeting.
Do you know, I so wholeheartedly agree with that. In fact, it's interesting in listening to some of the lectures this week, which is all about the multi-screening, as you can imagine, therefore how you can capture people as they're multi-screening, whatever the channel and the device is. But I still sit there and I watch and I think, my God, but they're clearly not even 100%, but they're not even 70% immersed in one thing because there's so many facets. And it goes for exactly the same with regards to your meeting and your private time, is somehow back to those golden rules, establish what you're going to do and keep firmly to it.
I wanted to just go back to one more thing you said at the beginning of when we started talking, which was that most of the people that are in advertising are under 30, right?
Yeah.
And then you said a very, very small percent are in the 40 to 50 range. Is that right?
Over 50 plus, so it's only about 5% of the industry are over the age of 50, which is terrifying. It means for most people entering this industry, 95% will not be there by the time they're 50. So the pyramid of where you really need to have as much support as you possibly can is that broad bracket between 30 to 50, because that's when it's very steep, and to stay on and cling on, it's sort of survival of the fittest.
One of the things that I've seemed to notice, and this is not based on research, so maybe I'm wrong, but even just looking around here, is that there are plenty of young women in advertising, and then there are a number of very senior women that are CEOs. I've spoken with fantastic women here this year and last, but there isn't that middle part. Do you think that really has to do with women not being able to figure out of how to have children and then continue their careers?
Absolutely. I think the industry's getting better. Flexible working is coming in. The HR departments are much more cognizant of it. People are much more geared to recognise that in terms of transitional coaching from the home back into work. But inevitably, there's that whole balance, and the reality is that there is a book sitting somewhere on my desk and I've yet to pick it up because it talks about 50-50 parenting, and it talks about how the man needs to at home take responsibility, but the reality is, unfortunately for the majority of people, it comes down to the woman. I'm sorry, guys. So that makes a huge difference, and that's when you suddenly see, is to the point about gender, a lot of women move out of the business. And in fact, it's interesting because when we talk about women on boards, there's a lot of discussion about this in the 30% quota and all the rest of it. It's not just women. If you actually start to analyse the data down to working women, not working women, parental women who are actually on boards, it's absolutely tiny. The reality was, when you ask people about their boards and their companies, they said that actually only 4% had half to the majority of working women parents.
That's interesting.
That's whereas the men were obviously at over 60 to 70%. So when you start to look at it, it's one thing to still be in the industry, and another thing as a working mum to manage to make it onto the board.
I'd just like to ask at the end, do you have any advice that has helped you personally in your career that you could share with us?
At the end of the day, I think comparisons are quite odious. I think we all constantly strive and we look to other people to try and sort of see how we can improve and be better. At the end of the day, set your own mark and your own goals and do the best that you can. Don't compare yourself to everybody the whole time. What do you want out of this career? Aim for that, and hopefully you'll do a fantastic job.
That's great advice. Thank you so much.
Thank you.